In modern relationships, there's a trend that's hard to ignore once you've experienced it or seen it happen to others. The subtle, and sometimes not so subtle, use of guilt and shame as a way to manipulate men. It's eye-opening when you begin to recognize it for what it is, because it's everywhere. For many women, guilt and shame are not only tools, they're second nature. This behavior, whether intentional or not, can completely disrupt a man's sense of self, leaving him questioning his own identity, worth, and even morality. We often hear about how women use their physical appeal as a form of influence, but guilt and shame are arguably even more powerful because they mess with your mind. The tactic is simple but effective. Make you feel like a bad person for simply being who you are. You'll hear things like, "You're making me feel hurt," or "You don't care about how I feel," followed by some version of, "That's your fault." It's a clever way of turning your words or actions, no matter how harmless, into a moral failing in their eyes. Now don't get me wrong. There are terrible men out there, just as there are terrible women. Abuse, violence, and disrespect do exist, and they should never be tolerated. But the manipulation I'm talking about often happens in relationships where men aren't doing anything wrong. They're just being themselves, cracking jokes, pursuing hobbies, or enjoying life, and yet somehow they're made to feel like villains for it. You've probably seen it with friends, or maybe even experienced it yourself. A guy who was once carefree, confident, and full of life gets into a relationship and starts to change, not for the better, but in ways that make him more withdrawn, anxious, and unsure of himself. Why? Because instead of being in a relationship where he's valued for who he is, he ends up in one where he's constantly criticized or subtly guilt-tripped for not meeting someone else's ideal version of him. A healthy relationship doesn't require either person to abandon who they are. A man shouldn't have to change fundamental parts of himself just to keep the peace or make someone else happy. The same goes for women. They shouldn't have to change either. Relationships should be about mutual growth and respect, not about bending one person's identity to fit the other's expectations. What's really alarming is how often men fall into this trap without even realizing it. They start second-guessing themselves, deferring to their partner on everything, and losing their sense of independence. Over time, this dynamic can erode a man's confidence to the point where he's no longer the person he was before the relationship started. It's like he's been molded into a version of himself that he doesn't even recognize, and worse, he doesn't know how to get back to who he really is. And here's the kicker. Women often don't respect men who let this happen to themselves. They might say they want a man who listens to their feelings and caters to their needs. But deep down, they're drawn to men who stand their ground, set boundaries, and stay true to their values. A man who lets himself be completely reshaped for the sake of a relationship loses the very qualities that made him attractive in the first place. It's important to understand that guilt and shame are power tactics, not genuine moral guidance. A woman telling you that you're wrong because of how she feels isn't the same as you actually being wrong. Feelings are subjective, and they're not the ultimate authority on morality. Yet many men have been gaslighted into believing that a woman's emotions are the final word on what's right and wrong. This is why it's so crucial for men to spend time alone, to get to know themselves, and to become self-sufficient before jumping into relationships. When you're solid in who you are, you can evaluate relationships objectively. You can see whether a woman adds value to your life, or if she's just there to manipulate and control you. You'll be able to set boundaries and stick to them, knowing that you don't need anyone else to complete you or make you feel whole. When you're confident in yourself, you can handle guilt and shame tactics without letting them affect you. You can recognize them for what they are, a way to manipulate your emotions and simply not engage. Instead of feeling bad for putting yourself first or pursuing your own interests, you'll know that there's nothing wrong with taking care of yourself. And if someone tries to make you feel otherwise, you'll have no problem walking away. The truth is, the right woman will respect you for being strong, independent, and self-assured. She won't try to guilt you into submission or shame you for being yourself. She'll trust your judgment and value your leadership, not resent it. But to find that kind of woman and to be ready for her, you need to first be comfortable and confident on your own. At the end of the day, relationships should enhance your life, not drain it. Don't let guilt or shame tactics pull you into a cycle of self-doubt and submission. Stand firm in who you are, set your standards, and don't settle for anything less than a relationship built on mutual respect and genuine love. If you made it until here, leave a crown emoji in the comments. I'm doing a little experiment to see how many of you are willing to finish what they start. Thank you so much for watching. Take care and stay strong.